Let me start by a show of hands. How many of you have ever been to sub-Saharan Africa? Come on, don't be shy. Okay. Now, how many of you have ever started a business? Okay, even fewer. Now, the last question. How many of you have ever started your first business in sub-Saharan Africa? Okay, so from the results, I can see that my TEDx talk might contain an interesting topic for you. When I was preparing for this speech, I started by asking a couple of my friends for the first thing that came to their mind when they hear the name Africa. These were the three top answers that I received. Desert, poverty, and needs help. Do we have needs help? Yes, it does. It seems about right if you look at the TV coverage of the African continent. However, if you dig deeper, the truth reveals itself to be vastly different. First, desert. Contrary to popular belief, Africa is not a continent of people living in huts on a savanna. It's home to over 54 countries, with over 40 cities reaching 1 million people, where the biggest challenges are traffic, pollution, and noise. Actually, in the year 2100, 5 out of 10 biggest cities in the world will be in Africa, including Lagos, Dar es Salaam, Kinshasa, Khartoum, and Niamey. Secondly, poverty. Indeed, Africa used to be an extremely poor region, but now the standard of living in the contemporary big African city is not much lower than in other developing nations. I can give you an example. If you want to hire a sales representative in Kenya, you have to pay at least $300 a month of a basic salary plus commission. If you want to hire a good sales representative, you need to pay at least $1,000 a month. And if you're looking to hire a real pro, you have to pay at least $2,000 to $3,000 per month. Based on the above, I am not surprised that as a third thing, my friends indicated that Africa needs help. No, everyone wants free money, and no one is more skilled in using the data to their advantage than the African governments. For example, according to the official stats, only 5 to 15% of Tanzanians have constant access to electricity. But the devil is hiding the details. When I lived in Tanzania, I didn't see this 80 to 90% of people devoid of the access to the most basic commodity. It turns out that most people are using a prepaid system where you load credit on your mobile account, and when it runs out, the electricity goes off. All these people in the official stats as counted as devoid of the constant access to electricity. Oh, this is me. I've been living in Africa for over 5 years, which allowed me to verify these inaccurate perceptions. First, I worked for a big German fund where I started an online platform in over 17 African economies, and later I returned to Africa to start and launch the first African energy drink brand, KABISA, in over 15 African countries. Thanks to this experience, I rediscovered the African continent, which allowed me to change my perception of it. And these are the three things that come to my mind when I think of Africa: diversity, culture, and challenge. Let's start with diversity. Africa is a huge continent, and as I said, home to over 54 nations with fascinating cultures and diverse economies. So it's extremely difficult to find a common point. But if I were, I would group Africa into 8 regions. First, we have the Muslim North, then the Wild West, the Easy East, the Difficult Center, the Relaxed South, the Planet Ethiopia, Indian Ocean Islands, and Cape Town. Let me give you a couple of examples for you to understand the scale of differences. In Wild West Africa, we have Nigeria, which was the first country in Africa that I visited. Before arriving to Lagos, the biggest city, I read that most abductions of foreigners happen on the way from the airport to the hotel. So I was extremely scared to go there. And when I left the airport, I was greeted by a heat wave and hundreds of people who were rushing at me trying to sell me souvenirs. However, soon I found out that Nigeria is home to the most entrepreneurial nation in Africa, present and trading all around the continent. Then we have Ghana, which is a place of origin of one of the most fascinating cuisines, with such dishes as fufu and wache. Fufu is a traditional Ghanaian soup, which is made of 2 parts, pounded cassava and a tomato soup. And it's traditionally eaten by hands, no spoon. Then we have wache. Wache is a dish so heavily digestive that when I ate it for the first time, I had to sleep for about 12 hours in order to be able to digest it. Then we have my favorite Côte d'Ivoire, which combines the 3 cultures: the Ivorian one, the French, and the Lebanese. The trade in Ivory Coast is dominated by the Lebanese families who work tirelessly in order to develop the nation. Then we have the Easy East Africa. If you ever heard the phrase Hakuna Matata, it comes from the East African language Swahili, and it means no problem. And indeed, Easy East Africa is a region where all personal and business problems can be solved easily. Actually, the very name Swahili means shore, since the language originated by the ocean and was carried inland by the traders. In Easy East Africa, we have countries like Tanzania, which combines the Maasai culture with Islamic, Pakistani, and Indian influence. Then we have Kenya. Kenya is home to over 40 tribes and an extremely rapidly developing nation. Kenyans are considered very entrepreneurial and savvy. Then we have Rwanda, with a sad story of the 1994 Tutsi genocide. After the genocide, over the course of one night, the nation decided to strip down their former identity, change their anthem, change their official language from French to English, change their flag and political allegiances in order to be able to move on after the horrible tragedy. Today, thanks to the strict policies of the Rwandan government, Rwanda is considered one of the safest countries in the region. After this, we have planet Ethiopia, which only by accident is located in Africa, as the only nation in Africa that avoided colonialism. They are extremely proud of their culture. In Ethiopia, they use a distinct time and calendar. Recently, they have entered the year 2012. And in Ethiopia, the day starts at 6 a.m. Why would the day start at midnight when you are fast asleep? In Ethiopia, the day starts at 6 a.m. when the sun rises. So if you arrive somewhere in Ethiopia by 8 a.m., the Ethiopians will say you arrived by 2. Logically, 2 hours after the sunrise. Then we have in the relaxed south such countries as Zambia, which are stuck in the middle of the continent. And when I first arrived there and I was waiting for the car to pick me up, I learned the meaning of the 3 words: now, and soon. If a Zambian says, "I'm coming now," they have probably not left home yet, and it's uncertain if they would ever arrive. Only if you hear a phrase, "I'm coming now," it means the highest level of urgency. However, if you hear a Zambian say a phrase, "I'm coming soon," it means that they're probably never coming at all. If you ever want to understand Africa and how to do business there, you have to understand the culture and values of people that are living on the continent. Since it's a huge piece of land, it's very difficult to find a common denominator, but there are at least 2 observations that I want to share with you. First is the meaning of family. Family is the most important thing for the African people. And it doesn't mean what you think it means. In Poland, family is a husband and wife and their 1 or 2 kids. In Africa, family is a multi-generational network of people who are connected to you by blood, friendship, or proximity. A neighbor or a good friend can also be considered a member of a family. This actually reminds me of an example of my good friend Lizzie from Uganda, whose parents fostered 12 children, out of which only 4 were their natural offspring, and the other 8 were taken in from their cousins in the village in the promise of a better life and education in a big city. Secondly, we have ambition. You may find it surprising, but I learned that Africans are extremely ambitious. Despite difficulty and struggles, they are striving for monetary success and a better standard of living. I can give you an example of my good friend Jerry from Mozambique, who beside his day job was also running a beach bar in the evenings and selling used cars imported from South Africa on the weekends in order to be able to build a house in the suburbs for his wife and kids. Once you understand the people and culture of a place where you want to set up your business, you will soon find out about the many challenges that are waiting for you. And I would group them into 4 categories. The political ones, the economic ones, the sociological ones, and the technological ones. Let me start by the political ones. If you are an entrepreneur, you need a stable and predictable law in order to know what can and cannot be done. Unfortunately, many of the African countries have an unclear, unpredictable, unstable, ever-changing law, which is structured in a way that is impossible to follow. Then, the economic level. Most of the African countries still have the period of their fastest growth ahead of them. So if you decide to do business there, the takeoff will be extremely slow. Africans are not so willing to try out new products due to many scams and substandard products that appear on their markets. Then we have the sociological level. If you are a foreigner coming to Africa and trying to set up a business, people will presume you are an American and coming to their country to set up an NGO and give out stuff for free. This actually happened to me just recently on the streets of Nairobi, where a random man approached me saying, "White man, take me to America." I said, "I am not from America." And the look on his face was priceless. He failed to conceive how was it possible for a white man not to come from the United States. Then, finally, we have the technological level. The internet in Africa is much more expensive than in Europe. In Poland, if you want a high-speed internet access, you would pay not more than, $15 per month. In Kenya, you have to pay at least $100 a month. Also, frequent power outages and blackouts make it difficult to run business and to communicate. However, if you understand the diversity, understand the culture and challenges, suddenly the impossible becomes achievable. And if it's achievable, anyone can do it. Africa is a continent neglected by the Western world, its corporations, governments, and entrepreneurs. China, however, considers Africa a crucial point to their Belt and Road Initiative, with many hundreds initiatives and companies starting all across the continent. Today, 1 in 7 people in the world live in Africa. And in the year 2100, over 40% of the world's population will be living on that continent. If Europe doesn't want to miss out on the opportunity that Africa presents, our governments, companies, and entrepreneurs have to start taking seriously the continent that lies south to the Mediterranean Sea. Thank you very much.
Jak widać, te brawa mówią same za siebie, naprawdę, Tomku. Potężna dawka wiedzy okraszona ciekawym humorem. Chapeau bas, naprawdę. Chciałbym być tobą. Naprawdę.
A ja chciałbym być tak przystojny jak ty.
Nie. Dobrze, to przejdźmy do tematów mniej mnie jakoś... nieważne.